My daughter said, "Don't come to Christmas. We need space." Then they realized their mistake. My name is Alan, 62 years old, retired architect, living in the quiet desert beauty of Arizona. Everything was normal until that text message appeared on my phone screen. "We want to have a peaceful Christmas with our in-laws," my daughter Melissa wrote. Just like that, I was uninvited from the holiday that had been our family tradition for over 3 decades. The sting of those words cut deeper than she could imagine. What she didn't know was that I had just closed on a new villa in Sedona, the dream home her mother and I had always wanted. Before I begin my story, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if you've ever felt pushed aside by the people you love most. Christmas has always been the cornerstone of our family traditions. For 30 years, it was the one time of year when everything else stopped and family became the only priority. My wife Kate and I established these traditions when Melissa was born, and we maintained them religiously year after year. Kate was the heart of our Christmas celebrations. She would spend weeks planning the perfect holiday, from the decorations to the meals to the carefully selected gifts. Every December 1st, we would haul boxes of ornaments from the attic and spend the evening decorating our tree while Christmas carols played in the background. Melissa would always get the honor of placing the star on top, even as she grew older. I can still see Kate lifting our little girl up to reach the highest branch, both of their faces glowing in the multicolored lights. One of our most meaningful traditions was making a new ornament each year. Kate was talented with crafts, and she taught both Melissa and me to create something special to mark each passing year. We have 30 handmade ornaments each, telling the story of a different Christmas. The popsicle stick frame with Melissa's kindergarten photo. The salt dough Santa made during a snowstorm when Melissa was 10. The delicate glass ball filled with sand from our beach vacation when she was 16. When Melissa was young, Christmas morning was magical. She would wake us up before dawn, bouncing with excitement to see what Santa had brought. Kate would make her famous cinnamon rolls, while I brewed coffee, and we would watch our daughter tear through her presents with unbridled joy. As she grew older, the time of waking changed, but the tradition remained. Even in her teenage years, when friends became more important, Melissa never missed Christmas morning with us. I started a special collection for Melissa when she was 5, a snow angel for every year. Each one was different, some crystal, some porcelain, some carved wood, but all were carefully selected to represent something special about that year in her life. By the time she left for college, she had 15 angels that she would proudly display in her dorm room during the holidays. Everything changed 8 years ago when Kate was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. She fought bravely for 14 months, but eventually the cancer won. She passed away in March, leaving a gaping hole in our lives that seemed impossible to fill. That first Christmas without her was almost unbearable. Melissa, then 26, came home from her job in Phoenix, and we both moved through the holiday like ghosts. We decorated the tree because Kate would have wanted us to, but neither of us had the heart for celebration. The second year was marginally better. We decided to honor Kate by maintaining all of our traditions exactly as she would have wanted. I learned to make her cinnamon rolls. We crafted ornaments together. I continued the snow angel collection. It was our way of keeping her with us, of ensuring that her spirit lived on in our celebrations. 5 years ago, Melissa married Daniel, a financial analyst from a wealthy Boston family. He was polite and clearly cared for my daughter, so I welcomed him into our traditions. They continued coming to my house for Christmas, and I was thrilled when they decided to move closer, settling in Phoenix, where Daniel had accepted a position with a prestigious firm. 4 years ago, Lucas was born, followed by Emma 2 years later. Having my grandchildren added a new dimension to our Christmas celebrations. Seeing their excitement reminded me of Melissa at that age, and for the first time since Kate's death, The holiday felt truly joyful again. I transformed the guest bedroom into a special space for the kids with bunk beds and toys and books. I wanted my home to be a place they loved visiting. Throughout all the changes in our lives, one thing remained constant: Christmas was spent together. Even after Kate's passing, I never spent the holiday alone. Melissa made sure of that, continuing our family traditions even as she started her own family. Christmas was our time to remember Kate, to celebrate our family, and to create new memories with the next generation. At least that's what I thought until this year. Christmas has always been about family, Kate used to say. It's not about the gifts or the food or the decorations. It's about being together. I've held those words close to my heart every December since she left us. The shift in our family dynamic began subtly about 2 years ago, when Barbara and Richard Wheeler Daniels' parents moved to Scottsdale. They had sold their successful marketing agency in Boston for a substantial sum and decided to enjoy their retirement in the Arizona sunshine. Their new home was a sprawling mansion in an exclusive gated community, complete with a pool, tennis court, and guest house. I first met the Wheelers at Melissa and Daniel's wedding. They were cordial but distant, clearly from a different social circle than mine. Barbara was immaculately dressed in designer clothes, her hair and makeup perfect, even at the rehearsal dinner. Richard was a loud, confident man who dominated conversations with stories of business deals and celebrity encounters. They were nice enough to me, but I always sensed an undercurrent of judgment about my more modest lifestyle. When they moved closer, Melissa was excited about the grandchildren having both sets of grandparents nearby. I tried to be supportive, but I couldn't help feeling a sense of competition developing. The first time we all gathered for dinner at their new home, the contrast between our lives became painfully apparent. "Alan, you must visit our club sometime," Richard boomed across their enormous dining table. "The golf course is world-class. Do you play?" "Not much," I admitted. "I prefer hiking in the national parks." And Barbara exchanged a look with Richard that I couldn't quite interpret. "Well, different strokes," she said with a tight smile. "I suppose that's more economical." That evening set the tone for our future interactions. Every gathering at their home felt like entering a different world, one where appearance and status mattered above all else. Their conversations revolved around expensive vacations, country club memberships, and the accomplishments of their wealthy friends. I tried to participate, but often felt like an outsider. As the months passed, I noticed subtle changes in Melissa. She began making comments about my modest ranch house, suggesting updates and renovations. "Dad, don't you think it's time to replace this old sofa?" she asked during one visit. "The Wheelers just got the most beautiful sectional from Italy." Another time, she frowned at my reliable 10-year-old sedan in the driveway. "Daniel's parents think you should treat yourself to something nicer. You've worked hard all your life." I brushed off these comments, explaining that I was comfortable with what I had. In truth, I had always been careful with money saving for retirement and Melissa's education. Kate and I had planned to upgrade our lifestyle once I retired, maybe buy that dream house in Sedona with the mountain views. But after she passed, I lost interest in material improvements. My simple home held our memories, and that was enough for me. Daniel became increasingly distant as well. In the early years of their marriage, he had made an effort to connect with me, asking about my architectural work and joining me for occasional fishing trips. Now he was always busy with his job at the financial firm, where his father had connections. Our conversations became superficial, focused on the weather or sports teams, rather than anything meaningful. The most concerning change was in my relationship with my grandchildren. Barbara and Richard showered Lucas and Emma with expensive gifts and outings to exclusive children's events. They had a dedicated playroom in their mansion filled with the latest toys and technology. My modest collection of wooden blocks and picture books paled in comparison. I began noticing the children's excitement diminishing when visiting my home. "Grandma, Barbara has a swimming pool and a bounce house," Lucas informed me during one visit, his tone suggesting my backyard was boring by comparison. "And ponies sometimes," Emma added, referring to the petting zoo the Wheelers had hired for her second birthday. I tried not to let it bother me, focusing instead on the quality time we spent together, reading stories, and making simple crafts activities Kate would have valued. But I couldn't help feeling that I was being gradually replaced by the shinier, more exciting grandparents. Last Christmas marked the first major shift in our holiday tradition. Instead of spending the full day at my house as they always had, Melissa informed me that they would need to leave by 3 in the afternoon for a special dinner at the Wheelers. "Mom and Dad have hired a gourmet chef," Daniel explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "They've invited some important business connections. It's a networking opportunity we shouldn't miss." I swallowed my disappointment and adjusted our celebration to the shortened time frame. We rushed through our traditional breakfast and gift exchange, and I watched sadly as they packed up their presents and hurried out the door before we could even play the board games that had been part of our Christmas tradition for years. Later, I saw photos on social media of an elaborate evening at the Wheeler mansion. Melissa, Daniel, and the children were dressed in coordinating outfits, posing in front of a 15-foot professionally decorated tree. The contrast to our simple celebration was stark and painful. I couldn't help wondering if our modest traditions now seemed inadequate to my daughter. As the months passed, I found myself increasingly sidelined in family decisions and celebrations. Birthdays were held at the Wheelers' home, where they could accommodate bounce houses and petting zoos. Weekend visits became less frequent with Melissa, often explaining they had obligations at the club or special events with the Wheelers' friends. I tried to adapt, suggesting we meet at parks or museums instead of my home if the children were bored there. But increasingly, I felt like I was competing for scraps of time with my own family, gradually being edged out of their lives by the Wheelers' wealth and influence. The message that broke my heart arrived 3 weeks before Christmas this year. I was sitting at my kitchen table sipping coffee and planning my holiday shopping when my phone chimed with a text from Melissa. "Dad, we need to talk about Christmas this year. Can I call you in a few minutes?" I replied immediately, a vague sense of unease already forming. When the phone rang, I answered on the first ring. "Hi, sweetheart. What's up with Christmas plans?" There was a pause, and I could hear Melissa take a deep breath. "Dad, I'm not sure how to say this, but we've been thinking. This year, we want to have a peaceful Christmas with just the Wheelers. You know how hectic things get running between houses, and the kids get overwhelmed." I sat in stunned silence, the words not fully registering. "Dad, are you there?" "I'm here," I managed to say, my voice sounding distant to my own ears. "You're saying you don't want me to be part of Christmas this year." "It's not like that," Melissa rushed to explain, though her voice lacked conviction. "We just need some space this year to establish our own traditions with Daniel's family. You understand, right?" I gripped the phone tighter. "I see. And what am I supposed to do on Christmas?" "Sit alone in my house. Maybe you could go to Arizona Senior Center event." "I saw they're having a holiday lunch," she suggested, as if this were a reasonable alternative to family Christmas. "Or maybe visit that neighbor you sometimes talk to, Jim, right?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After 30 years of Christmas traditions, after being the constant in her life through every holiday, I was being casually discarded and redirected to a senior center lunch with strangers. "I'll figure something out," I said, finally fighting to keep my voice steady. "The kids will still want their presents," she added quickly. "Maybe you could drop them off before Christmas, or we could come by the weekend after." That was the moment I realized how far things had gone. Not only was I uninvited from Christmas, but she still expected the gifts I always carefully selected for the children. I was good enough to be Santa, but not good enough to sit at their table. "I'll figure that out too," I said. After we hung up, I sat motionless at my kitchen table for nearly an hour. The house around me suddenly seemed very quiet and very empty. I walked to the closet where I kept the Christmas decorations boxes labeled in Kate's neat handwriting. Inside one box were the snow angels I had already purchased for this year, the newest additions to Melissa's collection that now numbered 34 for every year of her life. Later that evening, Melissa texted again. "We want to have a peaceful Christmas with our in-laws. I hope you understand. The kids are just so overwhelmed with multiple celebrations." I stared at the message for a long time before typing my response, "Enjoy yourselves." 2 simple words that masked the storm of emotions within me. Anger, hurt, betrayal, and a deep, aching sadness. I sent the text, and then turned off my phone, unable to bear any further communication. That night, I called my oldest friend Jim, who had been my confidant since Kate's passing. "She uninvited me from Christmas," I said when he answered. "My own daughter doesn't want me at Christmas." Jim listened as I poured out the whole story, the gradual takeover by the Wheelers, the increasing distance, and now this final rejection. "Confront her," he advised. "Tell her how hurt you are. Don't let this stand, Alan." But something in me resisted that approach. Perhaps it was pride, or perhaps it was exhaustion from trying to compete with the Wheelers' wealth and status. Either way, I knew I wouldn't be begging for an invitation to my own family's Christmas. "I need to think," I told Jim. "I need to figure out what this means for me going forward." That night I couldn't sleep. I sat in my living room looking at old photo albums. Pictures of Melissa opening presents on Christmas mornings through the years. Pictures of Kate and me standing proudly beside our decorated trees. Pictures of family and love and belonging. All apparently worth less to my daughter than a peaceful Christmas with her wealthy in-laws. As dawn broke, I made a decision. I would not call Melissa back immediately. I would not plead or argue. I needed time to process this rejection and decide how to respond in a way that preserved my dignity. One thing was certain. I would not be spending Christmas alone feeling sorry for myself. Not this year. Not anymore. The days following Melissa's text message forced me to confront some uncomfortable truths about my life. As I moved through my quiet house, I realized how much I had been living in the past, clinging to traditions and memories, instead of building a new life after Kate's death. For 40 years, I had worked diligently as an architect, designing commercial buildings across the Southwest. I had been good at my job, respected in my field, but never flashy or self-promoting. Kate and I had lived comfortably, but modestly, prioritizing saving for retirement and Melissa's education over luxury items or status symbols. After Kate passed away, I continued this frugal lifestyle out of habit and a sense that spending money on myself would somehow dishonor her memory. I drove the same car, lived in the same house, wore the same styles of clothes. The only extravagances I permitted myself were gifts for Melissa and my grandchildren, always hoping to see that spark of joy in their eyes when they opened something special from Grandpa. 3 months earlier, during my annual physical, my doctor had detected a heart murmur. Additional tests revealed a mild condition that would need monitoring, but wasn't immediately threatening. Still, it was a stark reminder of my mortality. "You need to reduce stress and enjoy your life," my doctor advised. "You're in good shape for your age, but none of us know how much time we have left." Those words had been echoing in my mind, along with memories of conversations with Kate during her final months. "Promise me you'll live fully when I'm gone," she had said one evening as we sat on our patio watching the sunset. "Don't just exist, Alan. Live. Travel to those places we talked about. Buy that house in Sedona we always dreamed of. Don't put it off until tomorrow, because tomorrow isn't guaranteed. I had made that promise easily, but had failed to keep it. Instead, I had settled into a holding pattern, waiting for visits from Melissa and her family to bring meaning to my days. Now faced with exclusion from their Christmas plans, I was forced to acknowledge that this approach wasn't working anymore. The next morning, I called my financial advisor. "Tom, I want to know exactly where I stand financially," I said, "and I want to talk about buying that property in Sedona we've discussed." Tom's assessment was encouraging. Years of careful saving and investing had left me in an excellent position for retirement. The modest house I had shared with Kate had appreciated significantly in Arizona's booming real estate market. If I sold it, I could easily afford a nicer property in Sedona and still maintain a comfortable nest egg. "You've spent your whole life being responsible, Alan," Tom said. "Maybe it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor." That afternoon, I contacted a real estate agent in Sedona. Sally had helped us look at properties years ago when Kate was still alive, and she remembered our dream house specifications: a modest villa with character-stunning red rock views, enough space for visitors, but not too large for one person to maintain. "I might have exactly what you're looking for," she told me. "It just came on the market yesterday. The owners are relocating to be closer to their children." Sound familiar? The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 days later, I drove to Sedona to view the property. The moment I turned onto the winding driveway and saw the southwestern-style villa nestled against the backdrop of the magnificent red rocks I knew. This was the house Kate and I had dreamed about. Built in traditional adobe style, with beautiful wooden beams and saltillo tile floors. The 3-bedroom villa featured a spacious open-plan living area, with floor-to-ceiling windows framing the breathtaking landscape. The kitchen was updated with modern appliances, but maintained a rustic charm Kate would have loved. A covered patio wrapped around the back of the house, offering multiple seating areas to enjoy the mesmerizing views. "It's perfect," I told Sally after touring the property. "What's the asking price?" When she told me, I realized it was slightly above my planned budget, but still manageable. Especially if I sold my current house. "The market in Phoenix is hot right now," Sally reminded me. "Your house there will likely sell quickly and possibly above asking price." I made an offer that day, slightly below asking, but strong enough to be competitive. The next morning, Sally called to tell me it had been accepted. The sellers were motivated and willing to accommodate a quick closing. Everything moved with surprising speed after that. I listed my Phoenix house and received multiple offers within days, ultimately accepting one well above asking price with a 30-day closing period. The timing aligned perfectly with the Sedona purchase. Through this whirlwind of activity, I told no one about my plans. Not Jim, not my neighbors, and certainly not Melissa. A part of me wanted to share the exciting news, to have someone celebrate this major life change with me. But another part, the part still smarting from Melissa's rejection, wanted to keep this joy for myself. As the closing date for both properties approached, I began planning a very different kind of Christmas than I had envisioned. If I couldn't be with my daughter and her family, I would create a new celebration. I thought about the people who had meant something to me and Kate. Throughout our lives, people we had gradually lost touch with as our world narrowed to focus on Melissa and her family. My sister Sarah lived in Colorado with her husband and 3 children. We had once been close, but in recent years, our contact had dwindled to occasional phone calls and Christmas cards. My brother Michael and his wife lived in Florida, and it had been even longer since we'd spent significant time together. Then there were Kate's closest friends, women who had supported her through her illness, but whom I had gradually stopped seeing after her death. Janet, in particular, had been like a sister to Kate, and I knew she missed our family gatherings. On impulse, I picked up the phone and called Sarah. "I've bought a house in Sedona," I told her after our initial greetings. "And I'd like you and your family to be my first guests. For Christmas." The surprise in her voice was evident. "Christmas? But don't you usually spend that with Melissa and the grandkids? There's been a change of plans this year," I said simply. "I'd really love to see you all." There was a pause before she answered with genuine warmth. "We'd love to come, Alan. It's been way too long." Similar calls to Michael and Janet yielded equally enthusiastic responses. By the end of the day, I had 7 people confirmed for a Christmas gathering at my new home. A home none of them had seen yet, a home that represented the beginning of my new life. As I hung up the phone after the last call, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: excitement about the future. For the first time since Kate's death, I wasn't just enduring each day or living for brief visits from Melissa and her family. I was actively creating a new chapter for myself, one filled with possibilities and reconnections. "You were right, Kate," I whispered to the empty room. "It's time to start living again." The weeks leading up to Christmas passed in a blur of activity as I prepared for both my move and the holiday gathering. I closed on the Sedona property 2 weeks before Christmas, giving me just enough time to make it feel like home before my guests arrived. Moving after 35 years in the same house was both physically and emotionally challenging. Each item I packed held memories, some joyful, some painful, all part of the tapestry of my life with Kate and Melissa. I found myself setting aside special mementos to show my sister and brother, childhood photos they hadn't seen in years, our parents' wedding album trinkets from family vacations. Long ago. I also carefully packed all the Christmas decorations, determined to maintain some traditions even as I embraced change. The handmade ornaments Kate, Melissa, and I had created over the years would have a place of honor on my new tree. The holiday tablecloth Kate had embroidered would cover my new dining table. These connections to my past would travel with me into my future. The day I moved into the villa, I stood alone in the spacious living room and felt Kate's presence more strongly than I had in years. "I did it, honey," I said aloud. "Better late than never, right?" I swore I could hear her laughter in the echo of my words. With the move complete, I turned my attention to planning the perfect Christmas gathering. I wanted everything to be special for my guests, many of whom were traveling considerable distances to be with me. I hired a local decorating service to install outdoor lights, transforming the villa's exterior into a tasteful holiday display. Inside, I set up a fresh pine tree in the corner of the living room, with the best view of the red rocks, ready for the treasured ornaments I had brought from Phoenix. For the Christmas Eve dinner, I decided to honor Kate by recreating her traditional menu roast beef with Yorkshire pudding, her special cranberry sauce, and the rich chocolate Yule log cake she had made every year. I wasn't the cook she had been, so I arranged for most of the meal to be prepared by a local chef service with just a few special items I would make myself. I shopped carefully for gifts for everyone, selecting items that reflected our shared history and mutual interests. For Sarah, I found a first edition of the poetry book we had both loved as teenagers. For Michael, a vintage fishing lure, like the one our father had used to teach us to fish. For Janet, a delicate silver bracelet similar to one Kate had always admired, but never bought for herself. I also purchased gifts for Melissa and her family, including the annual snow angel for her collection. I wrapped these and set them aside, unsure when or if I would have the opportunity to give them. Throughout these preparations, I maintained minimal contact with Melissa. She sent occasional texts, checking that I was doing okay, and mentioning they were busy with Christmas preparations at Barbara and Richard's. I responded with brief assurances that I was fine, and wished them well with their plans. I volunteered no information about my new home or my own holiday arrangements. 2 days before Christmas, my guests began arriving. Sarah and her family were first driving from Colorado in their SUV packed with luggage and gifts. The look on her face when she first saw the villa was worth every penny I had spent. "Alan, this is absolutely stunning," she gasped, taking in the expansive views from the living room windows. "Kate would have loved this place." "That's exactly what I thought when I first saw it," I told her, feeling a surge of emotion at having family in my new home. Michael and his wife arrived later that evening, having flown into Phoenix and rented a car for the drive to Sedona. Their reaction was equally gratifying. "Little brother," Michael said, clapping me on the shoulder, "you've done well for yourself. This place is magnificent." Janet and 2 other friends of Kate's arrived the following morning, completing our group. As I welcomed them into my home, I realized how much I had missed these connections. These were people who knew me, really knew me not as Melissa's father or Lucas and Emma's grandfather, but as Alan, the boy who had grown up in Illinois, the young man who had fallen head over heels for Kate, the architect who had built a modest but successful career. That evening, Christmas Eve, we gathered in the living room to decorate the tree. I brought out the boxes of ornaments, and we spent hours hanging them while sharing stories of Christmases past. Many of the ornaments prompted memories of Kate, and for the first time in years, I found I could talk about her without the crushing weight of grief. Instead, there was a bittersweet joy in celebrating her life and the love she had brought to all of us. "Remember the year Kate organized that Secret Santa exchange?" Janet laughed. "And everyone somehow ended up giving Michael gifts meant for women. 6 pairs of earrings." Michael groaned. "I still think she rigged it somehow." We laughed together, the sound filling my new home with warmth and life. After the tree was decorated, we shared a simple dinner of soup and sandwiches, saving our appetite for the formal Christmas meal the next day. As we ate, the conversation turned to Melissa. "Have you told her about the move?" Sarah asked gently. I shook my head. "She's been busy with her in-laws. I haven't found the right moment." My sister and brother exchanged glances, but didn't press the issue. They knew me well enough to sense there was more to the story than I was sharing. Later, as everyone settled into their rooms for the night, I sat alone on the patio wrapped in a blanket against the desert night chill, gazing at the starlit sky. My phone chimed with a text from Melissa. "Merry Christmas Eve, Dad. Hope you're not too lonely. Kids are super excited for tomorrow at the Wheelers. They've gone all out this year." I looked at the text for a long moment, thinking of the joyful evening I had just spent with people who genuinely wanted to be in my company. For the first time, I felt a twinge of pity rather than hurt. Pity that Melissa couldn't see what she was missing by excluding me from her life. "Merry Christmas Eve to you all," I texted back. "Enjoy your celebration." I turned off my phone and went inside to join the others for a nightcap, leaving Melissa's concerns about my loneliness unanswered. Tomorrow would be Christmas Day, and for once I was looking forward to it with genuine anticipation rather than obligatory cheer. Christmas morning dawned with a dusting of snow on the red rocks, creating a picturesque scene that seemed almost too perfect to be real. I woke early, as I always did on Christmas, and spent a quiet moment on the patio with my coffee, watching the sunrise paint the landscape in shades of pink and gold. One by one, my guests emerged from their rooms, drawn by the aroma of fresh coffee and the cinnamon rolls I had baked using Kate's recipe. Sarah's children, though teenagers, now still had that Christmas morning excitement as they gathered around the tree, eyeing the presents with anticipation. "Should we wait for everyone before we open gifts?" Sarah's eldest asked, showing admirable restraint. "Yes, let's all be together," I agreed, touched by the consideration. Once everyone had assembled with coffee and breakfast, we began the gift exchange. The living room filled with exclamations of surprise and gratitude as packages were unwrapped. Sarah teared up when she saw the rare poetry book. Michael laughed with delight at the vintage fishing lure, immediately launching into stories about fishing with our father. Janet clasped the silver bracelet to her wrist with a watery smile. "Kate always had the best taste," she said. "She would have loved this." I received equally thoughtful gifts in return: a handcrafted leather journal from Sarah, a set of high-quality hiking gear from Michael, and a photo album Janet had created using pictures of Kate I'd never seen before, taken during their girls' weekends over the years. As we sat surrounded by discarded wrapping paper and ribbons, I felt a completeness I hadn't experienced in years. These people knew me, valued me, had made efforts to be with me during the holidays. The contrast with Melissa's casual dismissal couldn't have been starker. After gifts, we bundled up for a short hike on one of the gentler trails near my property. The fresh air and exercise invigorated us all, and the conversation flowed easily as we walked. Back at the house, we helped prepare for the evening meal, working together in the kitchen, while Christmas music played in the background. Sarah, always the family photographer, took dozens of pictures throughout the day. Some were posed group shots in front of the tree or outside with the stunning red rock backdrop. Others were candid moments captured during gift opening or meal preparation. She posted several on her social media accounts, tagging everyone and adding captions about our magical family Christmas in Sedona. By late afternoon, the house was filled with the mouth-watering aromas of our Christmas feast. The chef I'd hired had delivered most of the dishes earlier, needing only final warming and preparation. I had insisted on making Kate's cranberry sauce myself, using her handwritten recipe card that was now laminated after years of use. As we gathered around the dining table, which I had set with Kate's holiday china and the embroidered tablecloth, I felt a moment of profound gratitude. Looking at the faces of these people who had traveled so far to be with me, I realized that family wasn't limited to blood relations or legal ties. Family was about who showed up, who made the effort, who valued your presence in their lives. I raised my glass for a toast, to being together, to memories of those we've lost, and to new beginnings. To new beginnings, they echoed, glasses clinking. As we enjoyed our meal, my phone, which I had left on, vibrate in the living room, began buzzing repeatedly. I ignored it, unwilling to interrupt this perfect evening for whatever crisis Melissa might be having at her in-laws' celebration. It wasn't until after dinner, as we were settling in the living room with dessert and coffee, that I finally checked my messages. There were 5 texts from Melissa, each more urgent than the last. The first was innocuous enough: "Merry Christmas, Dad. Hope you're not too lonely today." The second, sent an hour later: "Dad, why aren't you answering? Just checking you're okay." And the third made me pause. "Dad, why is Aunt Sarah posting pictures of you in some fancy house? Where are you?" The fourth was accusatory: "You told me you were staying home. What's going on? Who are all those people?" And the fifth, sent just minutes ago: "I'm calling you right now. Please pick up." As if on cue, my phone began ringing in my hand. I excused myself and stepped onto the patio to take the call. "Hello, Melissa," I said calmly. "Dad, what's going on? Where are you? Whose house is that in Aunt Sarah's photos?" The questions tumbled out in a rush. "I'm in my new home in Sedona," I replied. "I sold the house in Phoenix and bought a place here." There was a moment of stunned silence before she exploded. "You sold our house without telling me. How could you do that without even talking to me first?" The possessiveness in her tone, "our house," struck me as ironic, given how little time she had spent there in recent years. It was my house, Melissa, my name on the deed, my mortgage payments for 35 years. And yes, I sold it, and bought a place I've always wanted in Sedona, the same place your mother and I dreamed of retiring to someday. But all our memories were in that house, my childhood home. The memories come with me, I said. I brought all the important things, all the mementos and photos and keepsakes. The rest was just walls and floors. And who are all those people? Why is Aunt Sarah there? And Uncle Michael? You never mentioned any Christmas plans to me. I took a deep breath, determined to remain calm. You made it clear you wanted space this Christmas to focus on your in-laws. I decided to invite some family and friends I haven't seen in too long. People who wanted to spend the holiday with me. But that's not fair. Her voice had taken on the whining tone I remembered from her teenage years. You made me feel guilty about not including you, and all along you had this huge gathering planned. I made no attempt to make you feel guilty, Melissa. You told me you needed space, and I respected that. I simply made alternative plans for myself instead of sitting alone in an empty house. You should have told me. You should have said you were selling the house and moving and having people over for Christmas. Why? I asked simply. You had made your choice to exclude me from your holiday. Why would my plans matter to you? She didn't have a ready answer for that. In the background, I could hear voices. Likely Daniel and his parents wondering what was causing her distress. I have guests to attend to, I said into the silence. Enjoy the rest of your Christmas with the Wheelers. We can talk another time. I ended the call before she could respond and turned my phone off completely. Taking a moment to compose myself, I gazed out at the moonlit landscape. The magnificent red rocks stood silent and eternal against the night sky, putting human dramas into perspective. When I rejoined the others in the living room, Janet gave me a knowing look. Everything okay? I nodded. Just a minor family adjustment. Nothing that can't be resolved another day. We spent the rest of the evening playing board games and sharing more stories about Kate and our intertwined histories. As I looked around at the laughing, engaged faces, I knew I had made the right decision in creating this new Christmas tradition. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and valued, not as an obligation or an afterthought, but as someone worth traveling to be with during the holidays. Later that night, after everyone had retired to their rooms, I sat alone by the dying embers of the fire, a glass of Kate's favorite whiskey in my hand. I raised it in a silent toast to her. You were right, my love. It was time to start living again. Thank you for pushing me to keep that promise. I could almost feel her smile in the warm glow of the firelight. The day after Christmas, while my guests were enjoying a leisurely breakfast on the patio, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, I found Melissa standing there with Daniel and the children. The shock on their faces as they took in the beautiful villa confirmed they had had no idea about my new circumstances. Dad, Melissa said, her voice small and uncertain. Can we come in? I stepped aside to let them enter, noticing how Lucas and Emma's eyes widened as they took in the spacious living room with its magnificent views. Wow, Grandpa, Lucas exclaimed. Your new house is even bigger than Grandma Barbara's. This innocent comparison clearly made Melissa uncomfortable. She shot a look at Daniel, who appeared equally off balance. Sarah posted more pictures this morning, Melissa explained. We decided to drive up and see for ourselves. I had no idea you were even thinking about moving. There's a lot we haven't discussed lately, I replied evenly. Would you like to meet everyone? They're having breakfast on the back patio. Melissa nodded, though she looked apprehensive. I led them through the house to where Sarah, Michael, and the others were enjoying coffee and pastries in the morning sunshine. The initial greetings were slightly awkward, with Melissa clearly struggling to process the fact that these relatives she rarely mentioned had traveled across the country to spend Christmas with her father. While Daniel took the children to explore the property, Melissa pulled me aside. I don't understand, Dad, she said, her voice trembling slightly. Why didn't you tell me any of this was happening? The house sale, the move this Christmas gathering. I looked at my daughter, really looked at her, and saw not just the confident, polished woman she had become, but also the little girl who had once looked to me for guidance and support. When you texted that you wanted a peaceful Christmas with your in-laws, I realized something important, I said gently. For years, I've been orienting my life around your visits, your schedule, your priorities. I put my own life on hold after your mother died because being your dad and the grandchildren's grandfather seemed like enough. But when you decided you didn't need me this Christmas, it forced me to reconsider everything. But I never said I didn't need you, she protested. We just wanted one Christmas with Daniel's family without rushing between houses. And you had every right to make that choice, I assured her. But it made me realize I needed to make some choices of my own, to live the life your mother and I had planned before she got sick, to reconnect with people I'd lost touch with, to create a home that brings me joy. Tears welled in her eyes. I never meant to hurt you. I know, I said, softening. And I'm not trying to hurt you now. But Melissa, you need to understand something important. When you excluded me from your Christmas plans, it wasn't just about one holiday. It was about feeling that I was becoming increasingly peripheral in your life, easily set aside, when more attractive options came along. She started to protest, but I held up a hand. Let me finish. I've watched over the past couple of years, as you've gradually aligned yourself more and more with the Wheelers' lifestyle and values. I've seen you begin to look at my simple home and modest habits with something like embarrassment. I've felt the comparison every time Barbara and Richard provided some extravagant experience I couldn't match. Dad, that's not fair, she began, but her voice lacked conviction. Perhaps not, I conceded, but it's how I've felt. And when that text came uninviting me from the one holiday that has always been about our family, something clicked. I realized I needed to stop waiting for your approval and start living authentically again. We were interrupted by Lucas and Emma racing onto the patio, excited about the small hiking trail they'd discovered with Daniel. Grandpa, can we explore more? Emma asked. Her little face flushed with excitement. Of course, I smiled. But first, I think I have some presents for two special children who didn't get their gifts from Grandpa yesterday. Their eyes lit up, and even Melissa couldn't help but smile as I retrieved the carefully wrapped packages I had set aside. Watching the children tear into their gifts, a detailed model train set for Lucas and a handcrafted dollhouse for Emma, brought a familiar joy that transcended the tension of the adult conversation. When Daniel joined us, I could see he too was struggling to reconcile the modest, accommodating father-in-law he thought he knew with this new version, who owned a beautiful Sedona property and hosted family gatherings without seeking their approval. This is quite a place, Alan, he said, gesturing to the panoramic views. You never mentioned you were interested in real estate in Sedona. There was a question in his statement, perhaps even an accusation. Why hadn't I consulted them? Why hadn't I included them in this significant life change? It was a long-held dream, I replied simply. After my recent heart checkup showed some minor issues, I decided it was time to stop postponing the things that matter to me. Heart issues, Melissa interjected, alarmed. You never said anything about heart problems. It's nothing serious, I assured her. Just a murmur that needs monitoring. But it was enough to remind me that none of us knows how much time we have. Your mother and I always planned to retire here. I decided it was time to honor that plan, even without her. The mention of Kate seemed to deflate some of Melissa's indignation. She had always been defensive about honoring her mother's memory, and she couldn't very well object to me fulfilling one of our shared dreams. As the day progressed, the initial tension gradually eased. Lucas and Emma were thrilled with the space to explore, and Sarah's teenage children happily showed them around. Daniel engaged in conversation with Michael about fishing opportunities in the area. Even Melissa began to relax, looking through the photo album Janet had created with genuine interest. Before they left that evening, Melissa pulled me aside again. "Dad, I'm sorry," she said. And this time I believed her sincerity. "I didn't realize how much we've been taking you for granted. Seeing all these people who traveled so far to be with you, it made me think about how we've been treating you." "I'm not looking for apologies," I told her. "I just want a relationship based on mutual respect and genuine desire to be together, not obligation or convenience." She nodded slowly. "I get that now. And I want you to know that the kids kept asking about you yesterday. Christmas didn't feel right without you. Even Barbara mentioned that it seemed like something was missing." This small acknowledgement meant more than she could know. At least my absence had been felt, even in the midst of the Wheelers' extravaganza. "We'd like to come back for New Year's," she offered tentatively. "If that would be okay with you. Just us, not the Wheelers." "I'd like that," I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. Despite everything, I loved my daughter and grandchildren. I just needed our relationship to be healthier, more balanced. As I watched their car disappear down the driveway, I felt a sense of cautious optimism. The conversation had been difficult but necessary, laying bare issues that had been simmering beneath the surface for too long. Back inside, Sarah gave me a knowing smile. "That looked intense. Everything okay?" "Getting there," I replied. "It's a start." In the weeks that followed, small but significant changes began to unfold in my relationship with Melissa and her family. They did return for New Year's, a visit that was more relaxed and genuine than any we'd had in years. Daniel seemed to see me with new eyes, showing a respect that had been missing before. The children fell in love with the property, especially the small nature trail, where we spotted deer and rabbits. More importantly, Melissa and I began having honest conversations about our expectations and boundaries. She admitted feeling pressure from Barbara to prioritize the Wheeler family events and confessed to some embarrassment about my modest lifestyle compared to their opulence. "But seeing this place, Dad," she said, during one heart-to-heart talk, "seeing how you've created this beautiful home that's so perfectly you and Mom, it made me realize I've been valuing the wrong things. The Wheelers have money and status, but they don't have what we had in our family. The traditions, the real connections, the history." I didn't point out the irony in her using past tense, "what we had," but I appreciated her recognition of what had been lost and could perhaps be rebuilt. By spring, we had established a new rhythm. Melissa and her family visited the Sedona house once a month. I made trips to Phoenix to see them as well, but I no longer centered my entire schedule around their availability. I continued hosting gatherings at my home, reconnecting with old friends, and strengthening bonds with Sarah and Michael's families. I started volunteering at the local arts center, using my architectural knowledge to help with their building expansion project. In short, I built a life that was fulfilling and complete in its own right, not dependent on any one relationship. When Melissa and her family were part of it, that was wonderful. When they weren't, I still had purpose, connection, and joy. The most profound change came in May, when Melissa called to discuss summer plans. "Barbara and Richard want to take us all to their timeshare in Hawaii," she explained. "But it would mean missing our annual camping trip to Oak Creek Canyon." In the past, I would have immediately deferred, encouraging her to take the more extravagant offer. This time I simply said, "That's your choice to make. The canyon will still be here whenever you're ready to visit." After a pause, she replied, "We're choosing the camping trip, Dad. Some experiences can't be bought, and the kids have been talking about fishing with you since our last visit. Hawaii can wait." In that moment, I knew that the painful Christmas exclusion had ultimately led to something valuable. a reset in our family dynamics, a new understanding based on choice rather than obligation. By standing up for myself and creating boundaries, I had actually strengthened our relationship rather than damaged it. Life isn't about being needed every moment. It's about being valued for who you are, not what you provide or represent. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our loved ones is the example of self-respect and the courage to live authentically. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between accommodating others and honoring your own needs? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more real-life experiences. Remember to share with someone who might need to hear this message of self-worth today. Thank you for listening, and may you find the courage to create the life you truly deserve. Not someday, but right now.